One Thread Media, and I'm here with Lisa Myers of Fairmount Fibers, which is the U.S. distributor of Manos del Uruguay, and Cecilia Lalanne, who is the yarn director of Manos del Uruguay in Uruguay. And I'm also here with Soshil, who is the communications director. And I'm afraid I might have said that wrong. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I apologize. Soshil, yes, great. Thank you guys so much.
Good to be here.
It's a pleasure for us to be here. Thank you.
So we have several projects coming up in Manos Yarn. And, when I was thinking about Manos, I realized that most American knitters probably think about the rich colors and the yarn in our hands, and we don't necessarily connect it with the whole Manos del Uruguay project, which has been going on for 60 years now? Is it 50 years?
55.
50 years. Wow, that's wonderful. So could we start by just sort of talking about how Manos del Uruguay yarns are created? Cecilia, do you want to?
Should I go there?
Please, yes. Absolutely.
Well, in when Manos was first created, we turned into wool very naturally because that's the main fiber that. So everything has to do with wool, and when we started, the company started not 55 years ago. It was about spinning the yarn, dyeing it, knitting it, and that's what we do, and we produce a whole range of different products. What Sochil and I do is that we work in yarns, which is what we're talking today, which is part of the whole business. So we were talking earlier about Classica, which was our first yarn, which has been with Manos for all of these 55 years, which is a hand-spun 100% wool yarn. And then after that, a lot of other yarns came in. And so every year or every 2 years, we start thinking about what's missing in our collection, what we would like to see there. So it is a lot of conversations with Lisa, Fairmount Fibers, and also with our team to think of what we have in mind and to develop. In terms of fiber, it's but there's many options. Lately, we have been trying to showcase our local wools. Mm-hmm. So we're going for Corriedale, which is a very spread sheep breed in Uruguay. It's the most popular sheep breed here. So that's a wonderful wool that we wanted to showcase. It's in Classica, it's also in Cardo. So that may be the starting point. And then we think a lot about color, because that's really, what everything is about. So, for example, for our last yarn, Marla, and also Sammy, which are like sister yarns, it was all about trying to get that, having a lot of different colors all mixed up together, had that twisted look that we wanted. So it was a lot of work on how we can achieve that first, in terms of just exploring different options, and then how we can make that, that we can really produce it in large quantities and being able to, ship it and delivering it to our customers. So that's also a whole other story. And usually what we do is that I'm in Montevideo, which is Uruguay capital city, which our headquarters are here. And here we develop all the samples for knitting, for weaving, and also all the colors. We have like a small dye lab. So I would meet with Alex, and we would think about the colors that we want and how to achieve them. Are we going to, just use like one bath of colors, or do we want to make several? Is it going to be a speckle, or that's the fun part of everything, I guess. So after we have developed some colors, and we also, there's a lot of going back and forward with Lisa also when we have the colors and think about what are the patterns that we would like to see in these yarns. So what type of colors do we want? If we think that it's going to be for color work, then we think of the palette with colors that will go well together and that you can make nice combos. Or if we think it's going to be something that's going to be more like a basic sweater yarn, so maybe it's going to be more colors that you would wear, a whole garment out of them. So all of these things are taken into consideration. And once we have the colors for this particular yarn, we go to cooperatives. The cooperatives that dye yarn are two, and they are located in Cerro Largo, a department in Uruguay, which is next to Brazil, in the east-south part of the country. So in the cooperatives, the women, that all the artisans are women, and they are the ones that dye all the beautiful yarns that we produce and that we sell. So we will make sure that they learn the recipe for all the colors, how to make them, how the yarn is going to be presented. And so they would do that. And one thing that I like about our yarns is that every skein comes with a tag. And in that tag, you can see the name of the location. It would be like Fray is one of the towns where one of the crops is located, or it would be Dragon, which is the name of the other town. And then also the name of the woman who made it. So I think that that's something nice about Manos, that you can see it like right away, that it's not just a product, something that was created by a person, has all of that, care and work into that skein. So for the women to large quantities of yarn is going to, give them the possibility of support their families, to be able to stay in their hometowns, which is very important for us, to be part of their communities, and not having to look for other options and probably emigrating to larger cities.
I have to apologize. My little four-legged colleague is trying to make a cameo appearance. My cat is butting in a little
Okay.
bit. So, Lisa, you're sort of the bridge between American customers and the development of the yarns and colors, and also, the women in the villages. Um, how do you think about uh, making that connection between what American knitters will want and what what Manos is producing?
Well, it's an adventure because, well, for several reasons, but American knitters, you can't unify them and say, this is what American knitters do, this is how American knitters knit. Um, and there are great designs for knitwear coming out of the co-op because they do also hand knit products and sell ready to wear. Um, and many of their things are very attractive and would be really compelling, at least to American wearers. But Uruguayan knitters seem to knit quite differently than American knitters do. For instance, they would rather knit pieces and seam them together than work a garment in one piece in the round. On a trip a few years ago, we had some American knitters, and we went down and visited the cooperatives and met the artisans. It was an amazing experience, and everybody had their Manos projects with them, and somebody was working on the sleeves of a sweater, and the sleeve was on double pointed needles, and the artisans came and huddled around and sort of said, what are you doing? Because they would knit a flat sleeve and then seam it up. So sometimes my job is to interpret Uruguayan design for an American knitting style. Um, but also I work with my colleagues here to produce designs, and independent designers who seem to have their finger on the pulse. Uh, Fortunately, Manos being so long established in the U.S., most people are delighted with the opportunity to work with Manos. It's really gratifying to reach out to a designer and say, would you consider doing it? And say, Manos, I love Manos. Um, and it's wonderful to have now such a variety of bases so that if a designer prefers a single ply yarn for cables, we've got that. If a designer prefers a plied yarn for stitch definition and fabric stability, we've got that in a range of weights. Um, so a lot of guesswork to see what American knitters will want in terms of design support. Um, but at least I'm closer to it than Cecilia is in Montevideo, so I can
Yes,
try.
for us, it's a very, very important part of our work, being together with Lisa and all the team at Fairmount Fibers. It's really important for us, not just in terms of that we work really close in developing the yarns and developing colors and thinking about the business, which is very important for us. It's being so far away, in the tip of South America. It's really important to have all that feedback and have that vision of the US market. And also they do a terrific work in, delivering our yarns to the customers. They have an excellent service. And I think that's really important for, this type of yarns, the hand-dyed yarns. We are a non-profit organization. Sometimes people would think that the yarn is beautiful, the mission is beautiful, but they are not going to deliver or things like that. So it is really important for us to have this partnership that allows us to be in all the places that we need to be able to deliver our yarns and for people to get to know them and to be able to buy them. So it wouldn't matter a wonderful yarn if there wasn't for the guys at Fairmount Fibers that help us bring it to the US market and to all the customers.
Well, and we're walking the line, as Cecilia says. If there's no U.S. distributor, then you have one of a kind, beautiful hand dyed yarns, each skein signed by the artisan, and you might wait 6 or 12 weeks for delivery, or you might not reasonably expect the same color twice. Um, but because we warehouse the yarn, it's available, almost all of it is available on demand to a yarn shop. So they can count on us and stock us as if we were a more commercial yarn, a more generic one, but we've got all of the artisanal effects of a hand dyer. You just don't have to order 12 weeks in advance.
And I think it's very important that, sorry, that,
No, please go
that
ahead.
Lisa and the whole team, they really understand the social aim of Manos, and they really care about it. And they are able to communicate it to our customers, which is very important. And also at the same time, understand that when we think about a new yarn or any product that we make, there's always a balance between what the market needs, what trends are, what they need in terms of delivery, and also what the cooperative needs. That's one of the main aspects in Uruguay, in Manos. It's about caring for the women, having expectations that are reasonable about what they can do, because everything is very artisanal. So that's a balance that it's not always easy to achieve. And I think it's great that we have that understanding and that sharing the same values with our.
One of the things, speaking of artisan, one of the things I think is remarkable is that the original yarn from Manos Classica was and still is a hand spun yarn. And it is just astonishing that there is a generally available hand spun, hand dyed yarn that's available. Is Are you teaching people to spin? Cecilia, are
Yes,
people
we
learning to
are.
spin? Mhm.
Yes. One of the main challenges, I think, of this time is being able to how's the word, to bring the crafts, the traditional crafts, into new generations,
Mhm.
because in Uruguay, and I think in the rest of the world, some of them are not so interested in knitting or dyeing or spinning as other generations were. So it's really important for us to be able to teach to new artisans how to do all the different processes that we make. And usually in Manos, what happens is that it's a place where the grandmother would work, and then her daughter, and then her granddaughter would be there. So it's kind of something that goes from one generation to the other, and that also helps a little bit. But yes, and I think it was like last year or the year before that we really needed, to bring in more capacity for the handspun yarns. And so the cooperative has to go out in their town and say, okay, so who's interested, and we're going to teach you, who wants to learn, and this is what we can offer. And fortunately, a lot of women uh, fell in love with spinning, and we are able to keep our production.
I've been noticing a lot of interest lately in traceability and knowing where your yarn is from. And so having that tag with the cooperative and the individual woman is something that's incredibly powerful. I'm not sure that that's something that people fully appreciate. It's not just a label that gets put on by a machine. There's actually someone who's dyeing the yarn and making the label.
And we could go one step further. We do every year a trip to Uruguay for knitters and their friends and family, um, shop owners, for people who are generally interested. And we get out into the countryside as well as seeing the big city. And we go and meet the artisans, and you can show the woman who dyed your yarn what you're making out of it. You can meet her and take pictures with her. I
Mm-hmm.
can't think of another yarn available on the open market that's like that.
That's true. Um, Lisa, your team shared a photo with me that I would like to share now. That uh, I don't know very many yarn companies where you can go and see the yarn in part of its production, see it drying on the line, and I just love this image. Is Can you tell me about the cooperative that makes this?
Looks to me like that's from Dragon,
Mm-hmm.
where, yes, it has to be Dragon, um,
Yes.
where a lot of, that's Allegria or possibly Allegria. No, it's Allegria. Again, the sock yarn.
Mm-hmm.
It's dip dyed, so the skein is suspended over the kettle and lowered part way in, so that only, say, the bottom third of the skein is in the dye bath. And then after the dye has struck, um, you raise it up again and you rotate the skein and you put blue dye in the dye bath and then you lower it again. So Dragon is an extremely small village. I think the population was something like 752 or something. We looked it up. Um,
Mm.
so people come to work on their bicycles or their scooters or by foot. Um, and there's a couple of workrooms, and in the dye room there are kettles being heated by steam heat from a wood burning boiler, um, and there the yarn is dyed and then it's rinsed and then it goes out onto the clothesline to dry. It's pretty low tech. The building, the wall that you see there is, I think, not the wall of the actual workshop, but it's the wall on the other side of the backyard,
The
which is
neighbor.
it's the neighbor's house, um, and all the yarn gets hung out there, and um, it dries pretty quickly. It dries in about an hour or so. So it's ready. I mean, if it rains, it doesn't, but ready for the next batch pretty fast, and then it's bailed up to be sent to Montevideo for export. The chief dyer at Dragon is Anna with her assistant Cynthia, um,
Mm.
and they produce a really astonishing number of skeins, um, considering that for the most part it's just the two of them dyeing the yarn. Um, but it's work that they wouldn't otherwise have, and they do great effect. We're going to have a color actually for spring called Dragon, spelled like dragon because that is the name of the village, or the name by which the village is known. And it was an accident. It was a misfire that the wrong dye got into the bath, but it was hanging up to dry anyway when we were there in April. And several members of our tour group was like, I love that color. What's that color? Where do I get that color? Why have I never seen that color before? And we are like, well, they were going to put this in the second pile, but so now we are introducing it. It turned out to be a reproducible result. So it's one of the new colors that we're introducing for spring.
And I think I had a picture of that maybe I'll put in our show notes, because I have a picture of the visitors seeing the yarn hanging on the line, and what a powerful connection that is.
Yes, it's a wonderful time every time we receive visitors with Lisa, and I think it goes both ways, because for the knitters, of course, they get to know the artisans, they get to see how the yarn is done, they get to dye yarn themselves, which is also a lot of fun. But also for the artisans, it is very important, because for them it is really like a really big distance between their workshop to the people that are going to actually buy the yarn and knit with it. So when the knitters come by, visit, and they are knitting with our yarns, it's really like a very nice connection, and when they can see where all the work goes and how it is appreciated by the knitters. So that it's a very nice time.
Now, I certainly, for knitters, having this connection is very powerful. Is yarn making a strong tradition in Uruguay? Is this something where the founders of Manos del Uruguay knew that this was something um, that was already existing, or did they have to say, we think there's an opportunity here?
When Manos was founded, wool was already a big industry in Uruguay. At that time, I think there was about 20 million sheep in Uruguay, and we are 3 million people. So, so
Yes.
wool, it's everywhere here, and it's one of the main products from Uruguay. So when the founders were thinking about how what would be a suitable product to make, wool was like the natural option.
Mhm.
So now we don't have that many sheep in Uruguay, but still it's a very strong industry. Not so much spinning. There's something a little strange with our industry, where we have like big and really good quality wool producers, and then we have amazing wool mills that process the wool, but then most of the wool is export at that step, at wool tops. And the spinners are really very few now, and very small, and a bit old-fashioned, um, which is also a challenge for us when we want to create new yarns and to be able to have a good supply of yarn. Uh, and then there's a lot of small uh, industry with knitting and weaving, a lot of homemade products in that end of the production line.
Kind of a cottage industry, what we would call a cottage industry.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
Lisa, when you in terms of bridging the gap to American knitters, this is something that you had an intimate knowledge of before you started working with Manos. Is that you had a yarn store?
I had a yarn store, so I was in effect working with Manos before I, started working with Manos. We
Mm-hmm.
sold a lot of Manos yarn. Um, all of our knitters, our beginner knitters, their first project was a hat made out of Manos. Because the wool classica is a great yarn for beginners. People look at it and say, "Oh, it's so fancy! It's hand spun! It's hand dyed." It's a great yarn for beginner knitters because it has this unevenness of texture that, um, if your tension isn't perfectly even yet because you are a beginner, it's a feature, not a bug, and it works in with the beauty of the texture of the yarn. Um, so yes, I did have 10 years experience at that time with how American knitters knit and what they're interested in, um, which is by and large color. Um, Texture comes next, but while you're across the room from something, what catches your eye first is color, and then you go over and touch. And it was through that I got the opportunity to become the distributor because the previous distributor, Judith Shangold, was thinking about retirement, and um, she knew that there were some of us who got it, as it were, that this is not a yarn like any other, that you have to care about the social mission and the whole project. And um, so I was lucky enough to be her inheritor. Um, and I am not a retailer anymore, which I miss in the sense that what you get from helping a customer with her project and seeing, what part of the instructions confuse her or what she wants to modify for a different neckline, or that all of this is useful information, even if it's only one knitter. Um, so we go always to the trade shows to talk to shop owners about what they're doing and what they're seeing. Um, we go to things, the consumer shows like VK Live, so that we can see what people are wearing. We watch Ravelry to keep in touch with what's changing and what's interesting people in all the new material that's out there.
And it is interesting that you can be a fan of Manos yarns and have no idea of the social mission or have no idea of the fact that it's fair trade. But I think that that's really missing part of the richness of it. We're, missing that whole aspect of being part of a yarn community. So I really appreciate being able to sort of um, share that
Yeah,
story.
we appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank
Yeah,
you.
we feel that's something that we always feel that we need to be able to communicate more about who we are, how we do things, what's behind our yarn. So this type of opportunities is great for us. We appreciate it.
If,
Well, when
if
you
you
make a
know
product, please go ahead, Lisa.
Hmm.
you know how people say at Rhinebeck or the big festivals that they go wool blind, and their sister could walk up and tap them on the sleeve and they wouldn't recognize her because the wool fumes had gotten to them. It's a little like that with trying to educate people about Manos. They're holding this yarn in their hands and they're touching it and they're feeling it and they're thinking about the lovely texture and the beautiful color, and they've gone deaf a little bit. So we do everything we can to educate them. Maybe not while they're holding the product.
There is one yarn I wanted to ask you about specifically. Called is it called Milo, or I would call it Milo? And I'm just going to share a picture of this. We have a project from Susanna IC that is a shawl called Coco Shawl, and we're actually doing we're doing a review of this yarn next week and talking about it. One of the unusual things that this is a merino linen blend, and you can see just looking at it. Speaking of texture, so this is kind of an unusual yarn. And Cecilia, did you have some part in developing this?
Yes, yes, I did. When we develop, we call it Milo. In Spanish, it's Milo,
Milo,
but you can call it any way you like it.
Milo.
Yeah. Um, we used to do a lot of these type of yarns for one of our apparel customers.
Mhm.
We have been working with Ralph Lauren for many, many years. And we used to do with them a lot of wool and linen blends that were beautiful. And so when I moved from that area in Manos to the yarn development, I thought that we should have something like that in our collection too. And we wanted to have the linen unbleached. so that you could have, you know, the natural color of the linen, which is very nice, and it has a beautiful. So we wanted it to have that heather effect that you have, because when we dye the yarn, the linen doesn't take the dye. So you always get to see a little bit of those linen fibers in the yarn, which is what gives it that kind of rustic look that it's so nice. But also the linen is very shiny in a way. It has a glow, which is very elegant. So I love how this yarn, you have like the rustic look and also a very elegant um, range of colors.
And linen
If I
also
could
can
say
have.
a word about it, so the skein that's lower in the photo, um, you can see the heathering throughout the strand. You not just the little threads of linen sticking out, but the almost silvery look where it's not blue or green and it's undyed. If you look at the upper skein, you still see some of the linen threads poking out, but the yarn is much more thoroughly blended. It varies from batch to batch, so the color is predominating, and the linen is just lightening all of the colors, but it doesn't look as um, it's a more subtle heathering than you get with some of the darker colors or some of the other batches.
And linen
Yes,
can
and
add a drape and also it's a little bit cooling. So it adds some nice elements to it. I'm sorry, Cecilia, please go ahead.
no. So I was saying that what I like is that mixing the linen with merino, it makes it so much nicer to knit than just 100% linen yarn would be. So you will still have the elasticity of a wool yarn and the look and feel of the linen as well.
That's one of the I would say maybe Lisa, I don't know how you feel, but
Hmm.
I think that's one of the more unusual blends, and some of the alegria and the fino, which you mentioned is a merino silk blend.
Hmm.
You know, those are sort of classic yarns that can um, be used in this wide range, but this is something really unusual. I don't think you see very often. So,
Yes, we're always trying to have a balance in our collection where we can have, like, for example, all the merino superwash yarns,
mhm,
which are wonderful and are really suitable for hand dyed, because you can get, you know, you can go wild with color, and we
mhm,
really like that. But we also like to look for something different, but something more unique, something that maybe only we can make,
mhm,
or that really talks about what our heritage as Uruguayan producers,
mhm.
and to have a little bit of everything in our yarn collection.
One of the newer yarns is a beautiful barber pole yarn that where the two plies are dyed individually, and when they're plied together, they create this really exciting look that I
Mm.
think is a something pretty special. That's a newer one, right?
Yes, that's Marla. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's an example of that, of something that is really something that has an enormous amount of work on it,
Mm-hmm.
uh, at development, but also at production, and something that maybe not a lot of people can make. And we really enjoyed making Marla.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the original idea for Marla came from uh, colors that we were making in Alegria,
Mm-hmm.
and they were pulling a lot. So we said, okay, so this is not something that we want to. It's not something that we want to pursue. So we thought, but the colors were so nice that we wanted to do something with them. So we started, you know, mixing them, and okay, so let's do something with this. And it was a kind of a headache to be able to, you know, to really be able to set up all the steps that this yarn really causes.
Mm-hmm.
But we are so in love with it. We're
Sure.
just very proud and very happy with Marla, and we are very happy that it has also received a great reception um, from customers. So we're thrilled.
It's a wonderful combination of something where you can get enough of a consistency that you can make a whole project, but that's one of a kind in how all of the plies line up. So it
Yeah.
kind of gives that really special feel.
One of the keys, it's a non-striping plied marled
Mm.
yarn,
Mhm.
in part because the two plies, they haven't just been dyed separately, they're not the same colorway. This isn't plying together two plies of the same colorway, the same color combination, and knowing that sometimes color A on one ply will encounter color A on the other. There may be no colors that they have in common in the first ply and the second ply. So it increases the randomizing effect
Mhm.
and makes even more subtle and complex
Mhm.
stories.
Wow.
Mm.
Well, I have so much enjoyed learning a little bit more, not only about the yarns, but also about the process and the story behind it. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. All the way from Montevideo and Philadelphia, and me here in Northern Colorado.
Pleasure.
Thanks.